Very
Nice
good.
to
All
see
right.
you today.
Yeah, the medication is kicked in 5 minutes ago.
And if you say medication,
Yeah.
maybe some little coffee,
Right.
a little
Yeah,
caffeine.
little bit.
Well, you've got your notes. I've got
Gotcha.
my notes. Do you want to
I
swap
do.
notes? Do you want to start first?
Well, I'll start in the column coming up. I'm talking about how you can revive main streets. You can't do it by you're never going to have a main street like in the 50s or before the interstate highway system. But you can use the internet to revitalize some of these small businesses, say a furniture maker, that kind of thing. As far as the big box stores, though, which drove out of business many of the old Main Street stores, and sort of the wrath of God is striking them because Amazon and these other online purchasing arrangements are driving many of them out of business. So what you're saying, you're never going to see the sort of a Norman Rockwell idea of the Main Street again, but I think in certain affluent areas, both within cities and in college towns and in some fairly prosperous areas, you're going to find a lot of specialty stores will do well. I think an example around here that many people would be aware of would really be Wayland Square on the east side of Providence, which it takes advantage of an affluent clientele. It's close to Brown University and a lot of rich or semi-rich retired people. So that's going to be okay. But even in poor areas, where people learn how to make and then sell things online, I think you're going to have a bit of a revival on Main Street.
Old-fashioned Main Street. You are doubling down on old-fashioned Main Street.
Well, different. It won't be the Main Streets that we had back when we had fair trade laws, which kept the prices artificially high, the lobbyists and state legislatures, and when the prices were high because it's pre-globalization. You're never going to have something quite like that, but I think there is going to be a modified revival of certain main streets in which, sort of ironically, using online stuff. The internet has been seen as sort of a menace to Main Street. It's actually the internet, the biggest menace of the internet is to the big box stores, where you can buy all this stuff online. And the big box stores have fewer and fewer things available because of the competition from online. It's a sort of vicious circle. I can't find anything that fits in any of these big stores. Admittedly, I'm a little bit maybe thinner than some people. But.
Well, it's interesting you bring up, what's on Main Street right now, because if you take a Wayland Square, there's certain things that can't be replaced, the coffee shops,
the coffee shops, the local, the non-franchise stuff that so much of the country is franchised. The non-franchise stuff will tend to be in these affluent college towns in some of the more affluent parts of cities, but not entirely. I think when Olneyville gets going more, I think you're going to find them more there too.
I think it's interesting. You take a Wayland Square, take a Thayer Street. There's a lot.
Thayer Street, we should explain to people from far away. Thayer Street is based on the Harvard Square of Rhode Island.
It is the Harvard Square of Providence, very close to Brown.
RISD, the School of Design, Jonathan Wales.
And you say it's like Harvard Square. Have you found, because we both know both locations, a little bit of the corporatization of it? It used to be fun and funky, and now it's just corporate.
Harvard Square. Of course, when I lived near Harvard Square, they were trashing it. It was during the very early 70s, and they were breaking windows and up against the wall, and then it kind of came back, got very spiffy. But I noticed now with alarm, there's more franchise stuff going in there. There is not good.
There is a lot of franchise elements going into Thayer Street. A lot of talk still about the parking meters clearly around the city and their impact on businesses. But the lifeblood of the neighborhoods will be interesting to see.
And I think people want community. People are driving less. Smaller families are smaller, but I think there's a craving for real community, seeing people face to face, not just virtually.
So that's going to be part of your upcoming column.
Right, and another thing is Hyperloop. You know what the Hyperloop is? The high-speed magnetized trains through these cylinders that would take you from, for example, one proposal, have a Hyperloop route from Providence to Boston would take you less than 10 minutes. And it would go through Somerset, Massachusetts, which serves Fall River. Everybody thinks this is pie in the sky and all that, but actually the technology exists to do this, and it could be done probably cheaper than a regular high-speed rail, like the kind they're planning in California, between LA and San Francisco. And anyway, a company called Hyperlocal One, which is promoting this, or engineers and marketers, they've got 11 potential routes to the United States. And one is here. It's the shortest one, so therefore I think the most
How many
plausible.
minutes?
Under 10 minutes.
And can you, any
Like
way to
speed of sound.
any way to explain the technology?
Well,
to
it's
the-
magnetized. It's a levitation thing where the train is, off the track, so to speak. So it's using magnets. It's in a long tube, basically, and the technology exists to do this. The question is how physically is probably the word.
Well, that's-
Financially plausible is this? I think it is. I think it will happen somewhere. The great thing about around here, densely populated, we like mass transit. There are a lot of technotypes around here, and plausibly you could do it more cheaply than high-speed rail.
That's very intriguing. I look forward to reading that in your upcoming comment. I like getting the little previews here because all the notes I'm working off were what you already had written before.
Anyway, let's get to that. Yeah.
So, one of the things that you had written about last week was you lauded the president for his action in Syria, and as we stand here today, the mother of all bombs.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
The mother of all bombs.
To go after ISIS in Afghanistan. They've had that. That's actually not the real. That's kind of the mother-in-law of all bombs. They've got a bigger one. They've got a bigger one. They haven't used that yet, but it's certainly gigantic. That was used to go after a bunch of caves inhabited by being used by ISIS people in Afghanistan. Going back to the missile attack in the air base, I'm a little bit more ambivalent about it now since they didn't take out the runway. So a day or two later, Assad, and I believe assisted by the Russians, and I believe the Russians knew the nerve gas attack was coming, took off again to bomb the same town. Now this time around, the second time, they didn't use nerve gas, they didn't use poison gas, but they bombed it again. I'm still a little bit mystified why they didn't try to degrade the runway.
So, it was interesting during the campaign, President-elect Trump at the time said that, he was going to take out ISIS within 30 days.
Yeah, or 30 minutes.
30 minutes, 30
right.
days.
Yeah.
Do you think we have to see how the proverbial dust settles after today to see what the impact
Well,
of this
we
military
don't
action
know
is?
what his policy is, and this is across the board. Economics, he now seems to be reverting to basically mainstream Republicanism. Goldman Sachs is now, which he sort of railed against in the campaign, populistic campaign. Now it's basically mainstream big business Republicanism. He's apparently he's no longer calling China a currency violator. He's saying nice things about Janet Yellen, the liberal Democrat, who's the chairperson of the Federal Reserve Board. He's got all these people around him from Wall Street urging kind of moderation, shall we say. Get rid of the populism. It looks like Steve Bannon's going out the window.
There seems to be some
Which is
increased
good because
speculation
he's insane, so that's a good thing.
about the rise of the Ivanka Kushner team versus the Bannon team.
New York capitalist. This is going to discourage a lot of the president's followers. They wanted some populistic blow up the boat, economics. That's not going to happen. Also, with Trump, of course, he's very emotionally and otherwise you're right. He does tend to follow the advice of the last person he talked to. I know that phenomenon. I've seen that in business. I've even done it myself a few times. So,
it does tend to happen, but you know this, and it's been seen before in political cycles. Of what's said, obviously, on the campaign trail, who you court in order to get elected.
Things evolve, but this is amazing. I've covered presidential elections since 1972. Yeah. And this is just all over the place. Because, in fact, Donald Trump has no particular philosophy.
Well, that's exactly it.
To keep Donald Trump in the news. He's a wheeler dealer. He does have a certain kind of intelligence, sort of a feral, street smart intelligence. And, he is a New Yorker. We forget a New Yorker who a few years ago was giving money to Hillary Clinton.
Yes, and that's
So
exactly
he's
what I
not
was
a
going to get at.
conservative.
He's not dogmatic.
No, he's not a libertarian. He's not a conservative. He's not a populist. He's a flamboyant businessman.
And an opportunist.
And an opportunist,
Yes.
yeah. He's not stupid, though. When people say he's stupid, no, he's ill-informed and erratic, but not stupid.
Well, we'll see what ends up happening. I mean, it really sort of took the world by storm, obviously, after the action in Syria.
Yeah.
Interestingly
Which I
enough,
liked, by the way, at the time.
didn't that very morning Hillary Clinton say in a She was at some forum and said what we need to be doing is taking military action and taking a
She was always very firm on Assad and what then presidential candidate Trump said, no, we don't want to get involved in Syria. Now they're saying terrible things about Assad, and Tillerson used to be in a sleeping bag with Putin, is telling the Russians to back off supporting Assad. And the only way you're begin to save Syria, frankly, is to kill everybody in the Assad family. But I don't think the Russians are going to cooperate.
Speaking of regime change, what's your thoughts on North Korea?
Oh boy, that's very scary. I think there's an extremely good chance we will have military action against them, because it's getting to the point where we will face an existential threat, meaning they will try to lob a missile at us, probably with a nuclear weapon. Or they will threaten to.
We have seen them trying to take military action. I did an article a couple weeks ago, if you saw, interviewing a professor at the Naval War College, Professor Warwick there, asking about the implications of that. And it's interesting, he raised the point of if we take action, clearly they might retaliate, obviously, within the region, because if they don't have the capacity to, hit extended targets. But he talked about the potential for just mass casualties.
Well, Seoul is 38 miles from the border. The North Koreans have not just talk about nuclear, but they have extremely powerful long-range artillery. They could devastate Seoul. They could also attack Japan.
So we'll see there.
So
I know
one
of the
terrible situation.
As we keep eyes on places
and
all
we're sending
around the
a battle
world.
fleet there.
Yes,
We saw that.
We are there in the region. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk with folks. And so the Naval War College is such a resource here.
People have to realize how important that is. It's not just military stuff too. They have historians, they have economists, they have scientists. They have people there from 60 countries. I wish New Englanders knew what an incredibly valuable resource it is. And very articulate people, as you know.
Found in that interview. Hopefully, I'll be reaching out to him again sometime soon.
I would hope so.
Again, Professor
I'll give you plenty of other names too.
Talk with more folks there from the Naval War College. But want to tack around a little bit here. Let's talk a little bit domestically. In your last column, as I'm pulling up here, Gary Sass, who is a regular here on Mondays with Josh.
I've known Gary for many, many years.
You made a comment about equity in the Pawsox Stadium. You had the line, of course, of privatizing the rewards and socializing the risk. But what was that question he asked? What's the taxpayers' equity in the stadium?
What would be the taxpayers' equity? I know, which means, translate, what would be the taxpayers' ownership? And nobody's answered this question. I'm glad Gary asked it here at Go Local, only here.
In the studio.
And he tweeted, too.
With Josh.
And he didn't send me a nasty note when I put in my little thing about, quoting him. Socializing the risk. I don't think they know yet. They don't know where the stadium would go. Even though it looks now, it sort of smells like it's going to go on the Apex site. Which
smells very much like Apex.
The Mayan temple.
As we call it, the little Superman. It's just that large structure, like the Superman building.
Oh, it's hideously ugly. Unlike the Superman building, which has its charms.
Well, the Apex building, it's got that water damage, and everyone driving by 95, that's what they see when they go through.
And you want to see the stadium. We've said this time and time again. I think the best place, frankly, would be along the Upper Bay in East Providence. If it were beautifully landscaped, get a great architect like Friedrich St. Florian to design it, get landscaping. But if they're going to put it in Pawtucket, I suppose, very important that people can see. You can't see it from 95.
No, it can't be seen from 95 now. I think that's one of the things they're talking
about. If you're going to waste
about.
money, do it right.
They're talking about, obviously, that Apex as being a visible location.
Right.
Very interesting machinations yesterday here in Rhode Island at the State House. So the Republicans were saying we're going to come up with legislation that would say if there were any deals with Commerce and the owners, it would have to come before the General Assembly.
Right.
And I reached out to Commerce as soon as that was sent, and Matt Schaaf, the spokesperson, basically said on behalf of his boss, there's no tools at Commerce that we think are applicable to this. This is going to just have to be done.
One-off? Uh-oh.
It's just going to, it looks like simply
I know my Redeemer shall come and stand at the latter day upon me.
It has to go through the Assembly.
Yeah,
so it's an interesting deviation from what happened back in 2015. If you recall, the owners had gone to Commerce, said, here's the deal, and about 5 minutes later, the governor said, no way.
Well, it seemed to be a done deal. I mean, it seemed for a little while a done deal because Jim Skeffington, who of course knew everybody, knew where all the bodies are buried, and everybody does. But the governor, to her credit, pushed back on that. Now, this thing, I think, is going to, people are so sensitive to this stuff because of 38 students. they're going to have to take it to the legislature, and they're going to have to make a powerful macroeconomic argument for this, which I don't see yet. All I can say is I hope it's beautiful if they do it. Not
And-
just some tacky, what that awful thing in Hartford that's such a mud hen?
Oh, the
Hartford
yard
mud-
hens.
Yard hen.
The
I mean,
yard
just
hens.
Total fiasco. And of course, Hartford's in much worse shape than Providence. Providence is like Paris and Vienna, compared to
Compared
Hartford.
to a
A complete
Hartford.
catastrophe.
Well, you saw that we here at Go Local did the piece looking at the Hartford Yard Goats,
Yeah.
the new Dunkin' Donuts stadium there, the park there, excuse me. And major issues. Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
reported on it. Obviously, the mayor is kind of backing away now. This is a publicly funded park.
Yeah.
Again, we always think that things happen sort of in the padded room here in Providence or Rhode Island.
So
There's
12:05 a.m. No, this happens. I get so sick of only in everywhere I've worked. It's only wherever you're working. These things happen.
well, that's why
everywhere.
you look outside the box.
It's like
you
corruption
see
around here. It's just, it's the most corrupt state in the union. I suggest they spend time in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Arizona, Nevada, New Jersey, Chicago, yeah, Cook County.
there's no shortage. So
No, there's no shortage.
well, I look
It's
forward
human
to
nature.
it is human nature here, but at least the sun's out. It's looking pretty.
Yeah, right.
I will
yeah,
tell you this: I was
yeah.
getting a coffee in Starbucks, and the lovely barista said, "Are you working tomorrow?" Well, I think a lot of the
No.
city and the state might be off. So if you are,
For Good Friday.
for Good Friday.
I've never been given a Good Friday off.
I said-
I am a baptized Christian. but
I said,
not-
I'm in the
not-
private sector. I
Yeah.
will be here. Come in and buy a coffee. So
I even saw for the first time in years a bunch of people with ashes on their forehead, Ash Wednesday. I've not seen
prevalent
that
here.
for a long
Maybe
while.
a little resurrection of the faith.
Well, yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm a Druid, as you know, so it's somewhat
Bob Whitcomb, the
confused.
Druid.
The Druid, right.
Well, we'll see you next
Okay.
Thursday to talk about your column and what's coming
Very
up.
good.
Bob
All the
Whitcomb,
best.
always appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Waving to us to the viewership here. Appreciate you tuning in. As always, every Thursday we have Bob Whitcomb coming in to talk about his column, what he's looking to write about. Always has just an interesting hodgepodge of politics and business and technology. I'm really intrigued to read the one this week about the proposal that would have sort of a high-speed way to travel between Providence and Boston. He's always finding the really, really interesting things that are applicable here to the state. So I appreciate Bob Whitcomb coming in to talk about his column here in